Are you worried right now? Have you been fretting over some of the things that are happening? In America, we have a big election coming up, and a lot of people are just absolutely beside themselves with the possibilities. What happens if the other side wins? What happens if the other side cheats and wins? What if the other side doesn't accept the results of the election and we have turmoil? And you look at the financial condition in our modern times where we have an inflation rate that's out of control. It's hard for people just to pay their bills right now. Many people are worried whether they can keep their homes or not, or keep their cars or not, or even feed their families in the right way. And then there's the physical things that have been going on. We've had several massive hurricanes that have gone through America in the last month that have really left a lot of people devastated, where some have lost their loved ones, many more have lost their properties. And some of them weren't insured. I imagine most of them weren't insured in the flood areas that don't normally flood. And so there's just a lot of things that people are absolutely fretting about. And when you worry, when you fret, you start to get out of control. And when you get out of control, you start to do things that maybe later on, once you've reflected upon it, you wished you hadn't done. We lose control when we worry and when we fret. Now, there's a big difference between that and being concerned. I'm absolutely convinced that we need to be concerned about these things that have just been mentioned and other things as well. But the difference, of course, between concern and worry is one is productive. You're concerned about something. You're aware that certain facts exist, certain circumstances exist, and you realize that you have something that you can do about it. And so you have a proper concern and you have a proper reaction. But worry keeps you awake at night. Fretting causes you to just start, your mind to start going in all sorts of directions on the what ifs of life. What if this happens? What if I lose my home? What if I lose my job? There's all sorts of what ifs that people engage in when they fret and when they worry. And again, the difference between concern and worry, one is productive and one will lead to unproductive behavior. Now, I want to talk about the unproductive side for just a minute in a short sermon, hopefully. But it's from the 37th Psalm. And the 37th Psalm is written through inspiration by King David. And he's writing at a time where he's just kind of looking at a number of things that are happening that are really serious. And so he wants to encourage people not to fret or worry about it. He starts off by saying, "Do not fret because of evil men, or be envious of those who do wrong, for like the grass they will soon wither, like green plants they will die away." I think there's a lot of people who are concerned about evil leaders. I believe we should be concerned about evil leaders, but I think there's a lot of people who are absolutely fretting about them right now. Some are just mad that they're getting away with what they're getting away with, and I think there is a righteous anger that would be appropriate, but some people take it too far. We ought to be angry when injustice is done, but it ought to cause us to act in such a way that we start praying for those who are acting unjustly, that they can repent of it, so that innocent people won't suffer and so that they can avoid a penalty later on. But this idea of fretting because evil men are getting away with what they're getting away with and becoming so angry that you start doing things or saying things that you shouldn't be doing or saying, that's not productive. And God doesn't want that. And so he has David write, "Do not fret because of wicked men." In verse 3, he says, "Trust in the Lord and do good." This really is the key, isn't it? We get so worried about what evil men might be doing and what evil men might do to us, and have power over us that we forget that the one who is with us is more powerful than the one who's with them. God has always been more powerful than the forces of evil and those who follow Satan's principles rather than his. Trust in God is an important component of all this. And then in verse 7, he says, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him." This has always been something that's been difficult for me to do personally. I always want to just act immediately, and sometimes I react way too quickly with an inappropriate response. When very often the situation just called for me to be still, think about what's going on, pray about what's going on, ask God for wisdom, and then figure out in a very rational and calm way what to do. Sometimes the thing to do is just to wait for God, to ask him for his help. I think there are times that we feel completely helpless, that we don't have any control over a situation because the situation is just too big for us. And the little bit that we can do is just not enough in our own eyes. But what we fail to realize is that once you've done everything you can, even when the situation is not solved, that's when you have the most power, because now God will take care of the rest. It's kind of like the miracle of the loaves and the fishes, where Jesus told his disciples to feed 5,000 people, and all they had was a few fish and loaves of bread. And Jesus said, "Bring them to me." In other words, use what you have. And then Jesus took care of the rest, didn't he? He performed a miracle. We may feel like we need a miracle right now to get us out of this situation. We certainly need divine intervention. And so part of what we need to be doing right now is just to be still and wait for God. I'm not saying that we don't do what we can, because I believe that's always been required of God's servants. But don't get to the point where you just start fretting out of control and laying awake at night. And then you take that cancer of worry and you start spreading it around to other people. We do need to get other people to be thinking in an appropriate way of what to do during serious times. And we do need to help people to take serious the things that are around them. But we don't need to go to the point where we're starting to scare them or worry them unnecessarily. After he says, "Be still and wait for God," he says this: "Do not fret when evil men succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. For evil men will be cut off, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land." There are temporary setbacks for the righteous. There are times when we feel like we've been cheated out of what was right and just. And sometimes we are cheated out of what is right and just. And sometimes we witness things that just aren't fair. That's part of the test of life, I suppose. If we can right these injustices in the right way, then by all means go ahead and do it. Speak out on your concerns. There's nothing wrong with that, but do so with love and with trust in God. And again, you don't have to worry when these wicked men succeed. What are they getting? Maybe a little bit of power for a while, maybe a little bit more money for a while, but someday they'll kneel before God. This is the only thing they've got to hope for right now, if they're wicked, is this life. But afterward, the prospects for them are nothing that's good. So just be patient. Again, I'm not saying tolerate injustice. I watched a video some time ago of a man who is actually attacking a woman. I believe it was on a New York subway. And everybody just stood around and watched. Obviously, somebody was videoing it because the video came out. I don't understand when people are seeing something where the innocent are suffering and it's in their power to do something about it to stop them, even if there is risk to their own safety. There comes a point where decent people do have to take a stand, and they do have to risk their own safety. There used to be something about being an American that was superior to just existing. There was an idea that truth and justice needed to prevail. There was an ideal that there were sacrifices that we were sometimes called upon to make. And part of that sacrifice at times was risking our own personal safety if it meant we could help those who were suffering, who were innocent. But now we just stand back and we watch people be attacked. We can't do that. So there are things that we do need to get involved with. But on these big areas where we really can't control the situation, be patient and wait for God. Turn it over to Him. And by all means, don't fret about it. Do what you can, but don't fret about it. I love the verse that precedes all these verses. It's found in Psalms 37:25. Whereas after all these verses we've looked at, Psalms 37:25, and David is pointing this out. After he talks about all the evil in the land and all the evil that people have done, he says this, I was young and now I'm old, yet I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. David is pointing out that if you are righteous before God, He'll take care of you. He'll take care of your basic needs. David just said he had never seen the righteous's children begging bread. There is a reward for righteousness. Now this is not the reason that we serve God. There's a passage in 1 Timothy chapter 6 where Paul is talking to Timothy and warning him about those who preach the gospel thinking it's a means to financial gain. There are some people who become Christians because they think that they're going to become rich or because they think nothing bad will ever happen to them. That's not the reason we become Christians. And certainly you know, if you've been a Christian for a while, that sometimes bad things do happen to you. Christianity is not something that guarantees that nothing bad will ever happen to you. If it was, people would become Christians for the wrong reason. Just like they'd get an insurance policy. What do we do with insurance? Well, we buy it because we're afraid that there might be some disaster. We don't like having to have insurance. We don't like having to pay the expense for that insurance, especially as it continues to go up. But we buy it all the same because we want to have it in case something bad happens. We die unexpectedly and leave a family, or our health deteriorates, or our house burns down. We have insurance for those types of things, and there's a certain amount of prudence to that type of insurance. But you have to admit, we don't like paying the premiums for it. We wish these things could just be taken care of in some other way. Well, there are people who become Christians who, because David's never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread, who become Christians just so that they don't have to worry about things, or just so that nothing bad will ever happen to them. And again, that's not what Christianity is all about. And if it were, again, people would become Christians for the wrong reason. And they would view it very much in the same way that we view our insurance. We're not happy that we have to pay the premium, but we kind of hold our nose and do it just in case something bad happens. I believe there's a lot of people who are trying to be Christians who are looking at Christianity in the same way. They don't really like being righteous. They really don't like serving God, and so they give them the very bare minimum, thinking that they're going to get something in return. You become a Christian because you want to follow Christ. You serve God because you realize it's a privilege to serve God. Why would you want to do anything else? He created you. He gave you this opportunity. And so you have a mindset, I'm going to serve Him through thick and thin, through good times and in bad. And then when you have that type of a mindset and you're living your best for God, God really will take care of you. He won't prevent all bad things from happening to you, but He'll help you through the bad times. Some people think that that's not enough, and that's fine. Christianity is not for them in that case, is it? because they want to be Christians for the wrong reason. They think it's a means to some sort of gain. That same passage in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 6, Paul points out to Timothy that godliness with contentment is great gain. There are spiritual gains, there are emotional gains that go along with the physical rewards that come along with righteous behavior. But that contentment with godliness being great gain, think about that. It's the idea that you're satisfied once you've done everything you can with letting God take care of everything else. And even though you don't like unrighteous people harming the innocent, and you don't like dishonest people stealing things that don't belong to them, and you don't like people taking power in ways that are not legitimate, you still have a contentment before God, and that means you're not going to worry, you're not going to fret. You'll still be concerned, and you'll do what concern leads to. You'll take the right actions because of concern, but you're not going to spend your day worrying about what's going to happen next, and you don't lay awake at night wondering if something terrible is going to happen. When David says don't fret, this commandment is not something that is meant to be unpleasant. It's meant to give you something that will free you from the harms of worry and fretting. It's a reward to those who are righteous. You don't have to fret. We will have times in life that we don't like. We'll have difficult times that we'll have to go through. There will be times where we see people going through situations that we can help with that may require a sacrifice of our means, of our safety, of our convenience. That's all right. You do what you can to do the best you can. But if you can keep from worrying and if you can keep from fretting, it will keep you from reacting in the wrong way. Do we need the proper concern for some of the problems we have? Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I do these videos, is because I think some things need to be brought to people's attention so they can be figuring out the best way for them to handle the problems that we have at hand. But worrying and fretting is not a good way to handle them. If you and I can just be still before God, if we can just do our best and then let Him take care of the rest, well, life's going to work out. Your children are not going to have to beg bread. You're not going to end up on the street somewhere. You're going to be serving God to the best of your ability, and He will provide you with all the things you need to continue to serve Him to the best of your ability. So don't fret. Just be patient to wait on God and be appreciative for what He's done for you. Because again, godliness with contentment is great gain. When we talk about peace, we're talking about one of the most precious commodities ever known to man. It's not a physical commodity. It is a spiritual gift. And this is what we're talking about when we say don't fret. God wants you to have peace and to enjoy that. Are you doing it? Well, I hope this gives you something to think about. If you have time, read the 37th Psalm. I think it'll give you great comfort, give you a lot to think about. But until next time, I pray God will richly bless you as you seek to serve Him to the very best of your ability. God bless.